If you are an active duty service member ready to transition out of the military, a loving spouse seeking support and resources on how to cope with PTSD, or maybe a military brat ready to take the next steps to join the Air Force, or a veteran wanting to connect with others through shared experiences, then this is the right podcast for you. My name is Laura Figures, and this is the Freedom Isn't Free podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I am your host, Laura Figures. First, thank you so much for joining me each and every single week. We continue to bring you inspiring stories or resources that address is freedom free? Today, our guest is a veteran and entrepreneur that recently went viral for his video of pleading for peace after seeing the National Guard deployed to the Capitol. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Jose. How are you today?
I'm great, grateful, for this opportunity and happy to be here with you and, excited to talk about some important things.
Absolutely. Today, I hope our listeners spend the time with us as you described your experience being in the military. So tell me, Jose, what made you join?
Sure. So, I was born and raised in New York. I was born in Manhattan. My parents split up, when I was about 6. So I had a stepdad scenario and wasn't the best scenario. A lot of, emotional turmoil, psychological, things that kind of, I found at a young age, love with nature, being outside, because home equaled pain in a way. And so with that, at 12 years old, I was hanging out with my buddies and ended up robbing a house. 12 years old, that led to a probation charge, probation sentence from 12 to 16.
Wow.
So as I progressed in high school, or rather I didn't progress because I ended up failing 11th grade. I really took that time to start thinking different, join the track team, because I said to myself, if I can join the military, I can do anything. One of my buddies already graduated a year early, so I went to visit him at college, and I was like, oh man, I'm not smart enough to go away to college like this guy, but all they do is party. If I go to community college, it's even worse. I'm like, it's just not in the cards for me. And I'm like, how am I going to figure this out? And I was like, military. It was at that time, I remember telling my mom, I was like, hey, so I'm going to join the military. And I remember like thinking like it was going to be just the biggest shock in the world, that the kid that, couldn't put a joint on to save his life, that failed 11th grade, that, he's going to join the military. And that's exactly the reaction I got from everybody. You? Like, yeah. And so June 2001, I graduated high school a year late.
Being from New York, what was 9/11 like?
9/11 morning, I was up early. My mom was downstairs. I hear her scream to come downstairs. I run downstairs, and like she's just staring at the TV, and like it was right after the first plane hit. And I was just like, well, wow, what is this? And I've already started the enlistment process. And like I'm like, wow, that's got to be a pretty big accident. Like, wow, And then all of a sudden, me and my mother watched the second plane fly into the tower. And then now I'm just standing there. I'm like, and again, I was born in Manhattan, and it's like, you're proud, of your city and where you come from. And like, a lot of people run around, I'm brag on New York and stuff, but it's like, I always keep that in my heart. I'm proud. And when those towers fell that morning, I watch them fall, my recruiter calls and he's like, listen, man, you're going to go to war. Okay. And I was like, what? He's like, may not look like it, but this is an act of war. And he's like, so mentally prepare yourself now.
Yep. Yep.
And I just remember, I'm like, well, shit, I haven't even like gotten like all the way cleared yet. And I was like, and it was the moment I found out that there was a daycare there that really broke me, because I was like, how many parents were working upstairs with their babies in those daycares below and couldn't get to them, and vice versa. No, mommy and daddy's upstairs, and then the building collapsed. Like, what the horror. That broke me. So I bawled my eyes out 9/11. As a kid, I guess 19-year-old, and so fate had it. Was enlisted by January 2002. Did a 3-year enlistment. You get to basic training. They tell you you're not going to make it. You suck.
How was basic training? Everyone I talk with describes a different experience. What was it like for you?
I was fortunate that I remember the drill sergeant the first time it happened. He was like all up in my face, and I think I watched Major Pain before or something. You know what I'm saying?
Great movie. I love that
You know what
movie,
I'm
by the
saying?
way.
So it's like I already had. So I'm like, so he cursed me out, said all this dumb stuff, and all I said, I after he was done yelling, he gave me a command, and I just executed his command. I paid no and he looked at me, and I was like, in my mind, it clicked that second. All I got to do is this, man. The entire time when they come to break you, just lock in. And so, then in basic training, the drill sergeants that we had, were Vietnam, vets, or just hard-nosed old school Army. We're on field artillery, which we're known as the king of battle. We shoot, things that can destroy city blocks with precision. So in basic training, the indoctrination begins. You're a killer. You must kill the enemy, kill the enemy. Train like you fight, but you're a noble and honorable soldier. You're not a killer. You kill to defend per se, or if needed, that act will be done. But in the process, there's a whole list of stuff you have to honorably learn in this basic training cycle before you earn the title to be a soldier. So we started with a bunch. By the end of basic training, there was at least like 40, 50 guys that cycled out. Guys that day one were in a better shape and ran track and all this. So in basic training, you start to you're living with pretty much nothing. You're hungry, so you start thinking like a hungry person. Because if you go to war, you go to a third world country, they're hungry and not going to have food for you either. So you're going to have to learn to be hungry. And so I started thinking through basic training that, should it ever be that war happens, I have accepted that fate for me now, because you learn in basic training, what are your Army core values? U.S. Army vet. They're loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. It's an acronym for leadership. And those 7 values are to become your mind, body, and your soul, your ethos, to define you, whether you're on duty or not. Where you stand, these 7, and the one that struck me the most was the one I didn't know anything about, which was selfless service. And it was at that time that they tell you selfless service to you is the act of you willing to give the life that you have for your buddy without even thinking about it. It's the act of doing something that is, even if it's up to the act of giving life, with zero expectation for that act. With you literally selflessly saying, regardless if I do this for you, I don't expect anything. I'm doing it because myself, my spirit, my virtue calls me to do this. Example, grenade gets thrown in a combat zone. There's a Medal of Honor recipient that Google this, but here's this kind of rough scenario of how selfless service, operates in war. Let's say it's me and 3 other guys in this building right here. I see a grenade get tossed through the window before my 2 guys even see it. The second I see the grenade, by the time that the grenade falls on the ground, I'm already on top of the grenade. So my friends don't even have the fear to know that a grenade even entered the building, that I will save them, even from the even just split-second look, that by the time they even know that their life was in danger, I've absorbed the blast for them, died in the process, and totally okay with it, brothers and sisters, because that's selfless service.
That's selfless service.
And that has been done multiple times and happens to this day in different forms. Step in, you see the RPG coming. Before your brother's looking the other way and you see that RPG, you sprint to that RPG because he can't hear you, and you take it instead of him getting blindsided by it. And so that mentality started in basic training for me. And by no means is it easy. Mental toughness comes in different forms for us. I mentioned I ran track and field to get in shape, but I only ran sprints. Basic training, you get there, they're like, listen, you got to do a 2-mile minimum run before you can even get there.
Yes.
Okay, no problem. All of a sudden, I start wheezing, doing this whole thing. And I'm not even like, a mile into it. And these guys are gone, and like drill sergeant's like, listen, man, can you breathe? I was like, I don't know what this is. And go to the med station. They're like, do you have asthma? I'm like, I don't know. No. They're like, you may have asthma. And they're like, well, the problem with that is if you have asthma, you can't serve in the military. They're like, so this is what's going to happen to you now, Belen. Tomorrow, you're going to have to get hooked up to this treadmill where that mask be hooked up to that machine, and you're going to have to run the 2 miles on that treadmill while we monitor your oxygen levels the entire time. And he pulls out the Army manual and he's like, this is the number. Super simple.
Wow.
You're above this, you're good. You're below this, you're going back to the block, kicked out.
Wow.
I had a drill sergeant that was right there. He's like, you ain't going to make it, man. He's like, you're going back to the block tomorrow. So the next day, went to the thing, hooked me up to the machine. And I pray, say a prayer. And as I'm running those 2 miles, the drill sergeant's in my ear screaming, you're going to fail. You ain't going to make it, Belen. You're going back to the block. You're going back to New York as a kid who half-assed it through basic and couldn't cut it. You're going to feel like the entire 2 miles, man. And as he just kept trying to break me, I knew what he was doing. It just made me hungrier. And I just
stronger. Determined.
I focused on my breathing in a way, and the wheezing, I felt it coming, and I'm so mad, and I'm just like staring straight in front of me, like through the damn wall, and I'm just hearing him, and he's screaming. This is not a good environment, and doctor's right there. 2 mile run is done. Prints out the little thing that has a number on. Doctor looks at it. He's like, congratulations, young man. You're within the acceptable range for the United States Army. We'll issue a pro air albuterol inhalers, red, carry that. You're mission capable. And I looked at the drill sergeant, man, and I was like, just wasn't going to happen, man. And so I've never told this story to anybody. So, and that was at the beginning. So right there, I knew that there was zero in my mind. There was nothing that could be done in that time that I would not graduate. That, yes, I count on my fingers, even to this day. I have, at the time, I graduated, I think, with like a 10th grade math level. And artillery is a lot of its numbers, but it's like learning a new trade that even with my limitations, I will figure it out. And I just remember, encouraging my brothers. We would be broken at the same time. But then sometimes you watch your brothers, the mental toughness like that you guys had in the beginning, all of a sudden you're like, you keep going. And then your brother's over here like saying, I'm going to kill myself. And then now he's on suicide watch because he was going to kill him, And so we had cases where brothers it's sad. They would fall off the top bunk to smash their head off the floor and kill themselves.
So before you get into that,
and this isn't basic.
Yeah. Do you think that's PTSD starting in basic?
The reason I'm bringing this up now, because the PTSD cycle, in my opinion, planted because when you get to basic training, the second you get there and the drill sergeants are there, you're in like cattle carts, like hoarded horses in these being driven to nowhere, don't know where. You're literally on top of each other. and all of a sudden they open the cattle and they're like, get down, get down, get down. And everyone all of a sudden in unison is like I said, like 200 of us. We're all of a sudden down, about to do. I'm like, well, this is when the push-ups start. And all of a sudden it's down, up, down, up, down. That's like, right. And then anyone who wants water, take a break. Go ahead, drink your canteens. Run in place. They started fatiguing us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to break you down.
Drop. And then they kept drinking. They're like, drink as much water as you need. Keep filling those canteens. Drink, 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 drink. And we were so grateful that we were all able to at least be in that pain, but be thirsty and quench the thirst. And then all of a sudden they say, guess what now, gentlemen? Because field artillery, no women. So, they're like, listen, now we're going to go into this building for the next 2 hours and no one is allowed to even urinate. You must hold, and we just drank water for like an hour because they kept smoking us and we're running. And I remember, going into the building and I'm like, well, this is the Army. It's not the Boy Scouts. You guys have to pee myself, and then said, okay, when the pee pain comes, just ignore it. And then all of a sudden, see one soldier hand go up. And then it got to the point that everyone had to pee and you had to hold it. And so and you're getting lectured, they're giving you instructions in this 2 hours that you're having to also move while you're having to figure out a way to hold your pee. And some peed on themselves. You know how embarrassing that has to be, for some? It's humiliating.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And that's day one. That's within the first few hours.
Yeah.
And then it just keeps going and going because there's no calling home. There's nothing because you are in the United States Army field artillery to where if World War III breaks off, you're 911. And you need to be beyond mission capable. And so as the training went on, mental toughness kicked in. I was fortunate. I graduated, in May of 2002 from Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and went back home. I remember my parents drove from New York to Oklahoma. They were there for my graduation. I remember walking across the stage telling myself, Jose, you earned this one. You earned this one. That there was a lot of noise my whole life. But as I remember thinking, walk this walk right now, Jose, because a lot of people right now ain't got shit to say, nor will they ever.
Where was your first duty station?
So I was stationed in Germany. Was fortunate to have a good friend of mine that I went to basic with. He was stationed in Germany, got there in June 2002. Again, I'm a kid from the Mohawk Valley in upstate New York, and the mentality up there is you'll never get out of there. It's just everyone stays there. And in the valley, there would be times, you'd see the trees, and I used to always wonder what was beyond the trees. And I remember when I got to Germany, as life kind of came full circle for me as being that kid that, look at you now, man. You're in Germany, you're beyond the trees, And the Army gave me the station a choice to be stationed anywhere in the world. And I said, I want to be stationed in Germany because I want to learn.
I love it. I love it.
German people. And so I get to Germany, I'm a Puerto Rican kid, they're like, you got to learn German. I'm like, listen, I know Espanol, I know English, I'll give my best shot.
Nein, sprechen Sie Deutsch, Jose. Nein, sprechen Sie Deutsch.
Langsam. See, what I'm saying? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this. And in that process, they needed, I get to the unit and they put me in a room and the unit was out in the field. So they're like, it's kind of quiet here for the next couple of days. We don't really have blankets, pillows, just kind of hang out. This will be your room when they get back, I'm like, okay. So I the first night on barracks, on post, I make a pillow with toilet paper, remember, and get towels and fall asleep. I have an uncle that was in Desert Storm. When Desert Storm was happening, I was in 3rd grade. Well, this uncle stayed in the Army till when I was stationed in Germany. He was already a senior ranking NCO in Germany at another location.
Wow.
My mom's brother. We're very close, we're family. So the next day, because I told him where I was staying, I wake up to I open the door. It's my uncle, but in like civilian clothes. Like, Theo, what's up? He's like, what's up? He's like, Sobrina. And then he's like, what is that? And he looks behind. I was like, what, down there? I was like, that's where I was sleeping. He's like, that's where you're sleeping? I was like, yeah. He's like, where's the sergeant of the guard? I was like, what? He's like, where's your headquarters? He's like, oh, the building over there. He's like, come with me. I was like, shit. Okay. So there's a sergeant, feet kicked back, watching something, or, and this guy's sergeant of the guard. And he sees me walking up with this guy. He's the guy who in-processed me, but all of a sudden he's like, Belen, what's up? Who's this? And my uncle's like, I'm Sergeant Major such and such, and this is my nephew. And all of a sudden he gets up, he's like, oh shit. And he's like, I need to know why this private, family or not, is sleeping in a room in the barracks with toilet paper. And in my mind, I'm like, it's the Army. I'm good with it. I'm like, shit. I had no problem. I was so embarrassed. So he's like, no, we'll get him in a new room right now. So walk up to the other side of the barracks, knocks on the door opens, and then there's this little short dude from Texas, and his name is Stuart Moore. And Sergeant Such says, well, Moore, this is Belen. Belen, this is Moore. You guys are now roommates. And Moore just came from Fort Polk in Louisiana. He's been in the Army some so, take care of you. And then my uncle, to Stuart, says, this is my nephew. He's like, take care of him. I trust you. And my uncle says, listen, I'll come back and I'll see you, in a couple hours. So I got moved into the room, and that's where that was the first day I met my friend Stuart.
So I assume you went to the Iraq War.
We got deployed in spring of 2003. And for me, it was like, let's do work. Called mom back home. Mom, before you see it on the news, I joined the Army, and, world's a crazy place. And I got to go to work somewhere for a while. And she's like, what do you mean, Jay? And I was like, well, we're going to be going to Iraq. And like, you just hear that scream and stuff.
Yes. Yeah, Jose, that's a tough conversation to have with your
and
parents.
My mother, I said, Mom, Mommy, I'm going to be fine. I said, I'll be doing clerical work. I'm not going to be in the front lines. They have a place that they'll probably make, and it'll be safe. And fortunately for us, probably not even going to see any combat. And I said, look, I cried with her, and I said, listen, I got to call Dad now. Because me and my biological father were very close, even though, he left at an early age. And I was like, I got to hang up with you because now I got to call Dad now. And I remember my dad answered the phone. I'm calling from Germany. He's like, goes, hey, what's up, man? How are you, son? And I was like, man, I'm great, bro. I was like, man, listen, I got to tell you something. And I was like, I really don't know how to tell you, so I'm just going to tell you. And he's like, what's up? I was like, I got to go somewhere for a while, okay? And I said, I got to go to Iraq. And it was just quiet. And I said, listen to me, Dad. I'm going to be fine. I said, we train hard. We train well. We don't know where we're going yet. But, I'll be doing, I'm sure, some clerical or something like that. Get off the phone. Next day, we have the actual brigade command, the general comes, the entire armored division. Like, it's like movie-esque. I remember that day to where the general was going to give us our orders. And, we're all together, and he says, your orders are to deploy to Baghdad, Iraq for 12 months or until mission complete with the task of securing Baghdad, Iraq, and hunting for Saddam Hussein.
Wow.
You guys, and then we find out you will be the first field artillery division in the United States Army history to be trained in the infantry operation, to where your main duty when you get to war is not to shoot artillery. You are to take the time before we deploy to learn CQB and prepare for urban warfare. And I remember when he said, because everyone was like, well, fuck, man, how long will we go for when we go? And I said to myself, when he said 12 months or until mission complete, a lot of the guys, this is where mental toughness comes in, and communication. And a lot of guys stopped listening after he said 12 months and thought, oh my God, I'm going for a year. I heard him say, or until mission complete, to where if the United States Army is telling you you're going to deploy for X amount of time, dot, 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 or until mission complete, you better take the date they gave you and multiply that by a lot, if not infinity. You may never come home. And that's when, in my mind, and that's when some of the guys already started losing, the guys who break on the battlefield, because, and this is why I judge no man. And or woman, I tell people, do not ever make the mistake of judging somebody by by appearance, because a lot of guys took to bullying pre-deployment, belittling others. I'm from this hood, I'm from Chicago, or I'm muscles and all this. But there's something that happens when, we talk about all the time, shit gets real. And and to be quite honest with you, I have respect to those who come from nothing, that serve, that grew up in that hood and went through that, because it does apply in combat. It does apply when you're in a third world country. You ain't better than nobody, dog. You assimilate, navigate professionally out here. If this is where your hustle is, you don't showboat it. And so I always took that from where I come from. And so when we got to war, I noticed that most of the guys that were talking the most shit and were the ones that, when the first cracks happened, were the ones that couldn't shoot, were crying for mama. My best friend and I, as fate had it, we were teamed up, on operations. I was first platoon, he was second platoon. I was third section, he was second section. And what they do is they put us in tandems, two sections, platoons, they team up together. And we were those hood rats. When we got to Baghdad, we had frag vests. We had no armor for ourselves. The frag vests could barely even take a knife wound. No up armors. We're piled up, 10 of us, in the back of these old-ass Humvees with just busted-ass M16s, kicking in doors, looking for Saddam. So by the time December 03 came on, we're 7-8 months just bred war, because leadership is akin to the warrior spirit. By December 22nd, me and Stuart and us, Alpha Battery, 2-3, we lost Lieutenant Colgan, in September 03. That was the first time our 2-3 as a unit suffered, a loss. And then what ended up happening was we were tasked to, they have QRF out there. QRF is a quick reactionary force. I say it's like 911 in war. If your boys are pinned down, who are you going to call? QRF. And for us, Alpha Battery 2-3, we were just not mean-spirited, but we were raw, but we were an honorable raw. So when we showed up, if it needed to happen, it happened well within the ranks of Geneva and everything, but we didn't play. And that's the thing, you learn, some don't, but for the most part, war teaches you in the military how to accomplish something by the book and learning. Do not deviate from anything, follow the manual, and X will happen 99.9% of the time. But some chose to follow the path and then create their own and deviate, but that's another story. So on December 22nd, 2003, 5 in the morning, we had a kind of like an intel briefing on an operation that was to be conducted later on in the day. We were in the QRF, and also our sections paired. So me, Stuart, and the guys were getting this briefing together. And 2-3 had a lot of brothers, man, that really, just maxed it out. And then because the mindset for us was, you don't ever meet the standard, you exceed the standard, and then you become the standard. So excellence for all of us was always like and within that, certain ones of us were chosen to be lead gunners in certain operations. And so by this time, my loadout, my combat loadout was a 249 saw as my personal. So I carried that with the one drum in it plus 2 bandolier drums. So I had 600 rounds, the 249 I carried on me. And I was assigned to M16-203. So then I strapped my HE grenades to my chest. And then I was also 50 cal gunner. And after, a few weeks in theater and performance, then they're like, listen, you're, pretty much, going to be doing this when we do blah, blah, blah. And some other guys got selected in that same capacity. So on December 22nd, when it came time for this operation later on in the day, I was to be the lead gunner. Same thing, QRF, lead gunner. Teams were out on operations, and on the FOB, unless we were getting, sometimes they shoot rockets at us or mortars, and for the most part. But that particular morning, I sat there, I poured this bowl of cereal, and the doors were open, and I just remember staring at the sky. I was like, such a fucking beautiful day. And then all of a sudden, like lightning, the radio room door slant. It all happened like in one fluid motion. Radio talk room door slammed, but as it was slamming, the scream for the QRF happens, and so I'm eating cereal. It's all quiet, and like all of a sudden, this perfect day, boom, QRF, and so I'm I'm out. I'm in the room, gearing up, and I'm looking at people as I'm gearing up, but it's different faces from different sections, but there's no time. Like, fuck. So I can get out, jump in the gunner's hatch. I'm in the lead Humvee. It's like, all right, let's go, and then they're like, stand by. The radio comes, stand by from Gunner Main, because our battalion headquarters was Uday and Kusei Saddam's palace in Adamia. But Alpha Battery, we were, our FOB was a couple miles outside, but everything happened and filtered through Gunner Main, especially the heavy operations, because that came from Brigade, and then ultimately came from the Pentagon, because we were the fucking 1st Armored Division. That's what they made sure to let us know. And so as they're not letting us leave, it gives me a time to kind of just look around, and I'm like, where the fuck is everybody? And they're like, oh, dude, they changed the time of the operation that was happening later in the day. And, they didn't want to wake you up. And they, some of the guys volunteered to go. And I was like, oh, okay. And then like, all of a sudden it's like 5 minutes is rolling by, and it's just quiet. Like radio chatter's happening. There was an IED attack. And I had a guard shift that was happening, like as this was all going down. And all of a sudden on the radio, you hear it. Alpha Battery, stand down. You have 3 KIA. And we all heard it at the same time, in the same moment, and no names, but we were to stand down and await further orders. I remember, call it the universe, call it God, call it fate, call it what you want. But when I heard them say 3 KIA, I felt something.
Something came over you.
I felt
in your
something,
spirit.
and I said, my buddy's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I asked my chief, I'm like, do I just do my guard shift? He's like, yeah, just go up on if we roll out, we'll call you back down. We got to see what's going on. And I remember being this is a few days before Christmas, December 22nd. And I'm up on the guard tower. And the guard tower overseeing the motor pool where all the Humvees were. We're still staged, we're still on the line. And then the compound is there, the building's 3-story, And then all of a sudden, like, most quietest, it just couldn't be any quieter. And I remember one of our gunnery sergeants come out screaming, and he slammed his helmet. And he's crying. How do you call a soldier's mother 2 days before Christmas and tell her son is dead? And he's screaming. I'm like, oh my God. And then the guard shift ends. And our first sergeant and captain, they're like, listen, we need to have a quick formation. And I remember they're standing in front of us. First sergeant, he has his black Oakleys on, and cap, has his black Wiley X's on. They're not saying nothing, but I see
tears.
I see him. And then they start talking, and then they start crying. That was the moment I knew as a grown man it was okay to cry. It was the day my buddy died, and then our brothers died. And so the true horrors in life are for a soldier on the battlefield having a 50-50 shot of dying. And when it was time to go back home, I remember they were like, we had this formation and it's, we were there 14 months and, Sergeant Williams, was like, brother, aren't you excited? And I remember I dropped one tear and I was like, Sergeant Williams, I don't give a fuck. I was like, I got so assimilated to living there and so okay that Baghdad and that theater became my home, that on operations, instead of I maintained that mental posture to assimilate in a way that when it was time to actually go home, I didn't necessarily want to go home.
Well, Jose, I would like to thank you for your service and your support to the Freedom Isn't Free podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Laura Figures. I am your host. And as always, don't forget to thank a veteran for their service.